Ambassador Kane had once watched a civilization end with dignity. Birth was not a beginning, it was an insertion point. Death was not an ending, it was a redistribution. No single moment mattered more than another. That belief had carried the Velothi through supernova migrations, dark age recoveries, and the slow, grinding patience required to outlast younger, louder species that burned brightly and vanished. Kane had never questioned it. Why would they? The doctrine worked. The Velothi homeworld, Velath Prime, had no monuments to individuals. There were no statues, no named streets, no halls dedicated to singular achievement. History was stored as layered memory structures, vast experiential composites that any Velothi could access during meditative convergence. Personal memories were not private property, they were nutrients for the whole. Kane had contributed thousands of cycles to those structures, negotiations, observations, emotional calibrations from first contact scenarios. Their sense of self was diffuse by design, a soft-edged identity that prioritized function over feeling. They were proud of that. Individuality in Velothi philosophy was a developmental phase, not an endpoint. Young species clung to it, mature ones let it go. So when the Galactic Concord assigned Kane to Earth, they expected the usual arc: initial fascination, cultural noise, emotional excess. Then, eventually, the slow smoothing of rough edges as humanity learned to think in longer spans. The briefing materials supported this assumption. Humans were technologically uneven, but psychologically adaptable. Their art suggested an obsession with mortality, but also a remarkable ability to operate despite it. They formed coalitions rapidly. They recovered from catastrophe faster than predicted. The analysts had flagged something unusual in the psychological profile. Individual meaning saturation, unusually high. Kane noted it, filed it away, and moved on. At the time, it seemed irrelevant.
The transport to Earth decelerated along the planet's magnetosphere, its hull singing softly as charged particles slid past in luminous arcs. Kane observed through the forward viewport as the blue-white sphere rotated below. Oceans, clouds, storm systems forming and collapsing in real time. So much instability, so much life. The sensation was distracting. Velothi worlds were engineered for equilibrium. Even their wilderness zones were carefully bounded, their ecological feedback loops tuned to avoid excess. Earth, by contrast, appeared to thrive on imbalance. Kane recorded the observation without comment. Their diplomatic avatar activated as they entered the atmosphere. Humanoid, bipedal, a compromise form chosen to minimize cognitive friction. It felt heavier than their native presence, bound by gravity and inertia in ways the continuum never was. Another distraction. The landing site was a joint human Concord facility on the outskirts of a coastal city. Kane exited to a rush of sound, wind, distant traffic, overlapping human voices, none of it synchronized, none of it resolved into pattern. They understood abstractly that humans processed this chaos intuitively. They did not yet understand how. Elena Morales met them at the perimeter gate. She was smaller than Kane had expected, compact, quick-moving, her posture relaxed in a way that suggested confidence without dominance. She smiled when she saw Kane, the expression immediate and unguarded. "Ambassador Kane," she said, extending one hand, "welcome to Earth." Kane hesitated for a fraction of a second, then mirrored the gesture. Skin-to-skin contact registered as warm, uneven, alive. Elena's grip was firm. "You can call me Kane," they replied. "Ambassador is a functional title, not an identity." Elena's smile widened slightly. "Good. I'll try not to make it weird." Kane stored the phrase. They followed her to a ground vehicle, inelegant, wheeled, loud. As it accelerated onto a roadway packed with other vehicles, Kane noted the proximity tolerances. Humans operated heavy machinery within lethal distances of one another without apparent distress. Another anomaly. "You're staying with me," Elena said, as they merged into traffic, "at least for the first few weeks, easier for cultural immersion."
I have access to comprehensive human data archives. Direct exposure may not be necessary. Elena glanced at them sideways. Yeah, about that. Data will tell you what we do. It won't tell you why. Kane did not argue. They had learned, over centuries of diplomacy, that resistance to local methodology was inefficient. Elena's residence was a modest structure in a densely populated neighborhood. Houses pressed close together, separated by narrow strips of vegetation that Kane identified as decorative rather than functional. The interior smelled like cooked carbohydrates, synthetic cleaning agents, and something faintly metallic. "This is home," Elena said, tossing her bag onto a chair. "Make yourself comfortable." Kane stood still, scanning. "Where is the communal convergence space?" they asked. Elena blinked. "The what?" "The area designated for shared reflection or memory integration." "Oh," Elena laughed, short and sharp. "We don't really do that." "How do humans integrate experiential data at scale?" Kane considered. "We talk, argue, write books, make art. Therapy helps." Kane processed this. "You retain individual memory silos indefinitely?" "Mostly," Elena said. "Sometimes we wish we didn't." That answer lingered longer than Kane expected. The first days passed in structured observation. Kane attended meetings with human officials, cultural analysts, policy advisors. They listened to debates that oscillated wildly between pragmatism and idealism, often within the same speaker. Humans contradicted themselves freely, sometimes within a single sentence, and appeared unbothered by the inconsistency. What mattered, Kane began to suspect, was not coherence, but commitment. Humans committed to ideas emotionally before they committed logically. Once invested, they displayed remarkable persistence. This explained certain survival metrics. It did not explain the anomaly flagged in the archives. The birthday remained an unresolved variable. Kane encountered the concept repeatedly, in media feeds, in casual conversation, in calendar annotations. Each human appeared to track the anniversary of their own birth and the births of others with meticulous care. Elena's calendar was littered with reminders. Dad's birthday, Jen's birthday, Mateo, 7th birthday. Kane paused at the last entry. "Your nephew," they said. "Yep, big day," Elena replied, pouring herself a drink. "Why is it marked?" Elena looked up, surprised. "Because it's his birthday." "Yes," Kane said patiently, "but what is the function of the observance?" Elena leaned back against the counter, studying them. "You really don't get this, do you?" "I am attempting to," Kane replied. She sighed, then smiled, softer this time. "Come with me tonight, you'll see." Kane hesitated. Their mission parameters did not require attendance at private family gatherings, but the anomaly had persisted long enough to warrant direct observation. "I will accompany you," Kane said. Elena's expression shifted. Satisfaction, perhaps, or anticipation. "Good," she said. "Just keep an open mind." The journey to Mateo's birthday began with noise. The vehicle was filled with it. Music, Elena's voice as she narrated traffic conditions and family dynamics, the occasional interruption of her handheld device. Kane listened, parsing tone and rhythm more than content. Humans filled silence reflexively. They feared it, Kane hypothesized. Or perhaps they cherished connection more than quiet. The neighborhood where Mateo lived was even denser than Elena's. Children moved freely between houses, their movements erratic and unsupervised. Kane tracked them automatically, calculating collision probabilities that never materialized. Balloons marked the destination. Bright, fragile things, tethered against the wind. Kane felt a faint tightening in their sensory array, an anticipatory response without a clear cause. The door opened before Elena could knock. Mateo stood there, small and bright-eyed, his energy radiating outward in chaotic bursts. "Auntie Elena!" he shouted, launching himself forward. Elena caught him easily, laughing. "Hey, birthday boy!" The phrase struck Kane as oddly ceremonial. Inside, the house was transformed. Decorations in colors that served no functional purpose covered walls and ceilings. A banner declared Mateo's name in oversized letters. The space was crowded with humans of varying ages, all oriented, subtly or overtly, toward the child at the center. Every interaction reinforced his importance. Kane had never seen a social system reorganize itself so completely around a single, non-authoritative individual. They recorded everything. They missed nothing. And still, they did not understand. Yet. As Kane observed the flow of the gathering, they began to notice something deeper than surface ritual. No one here was assessing Matteo's productivity. No one referenced his future utility. No one measured his worth in contribution or potential. They were celebrating presence. The idea was unsettling. Kane's internal models flagged a deviation, an emotional response forming without a corresponding logical anchor. They suppressed it reflexively, reinforcing the mental disciplines drilled into them across centuries. Observe, do not absorb. But absorption was happening anyway. The anomaly was no longer theoretical. It was standing in front of them, sticky-fingered and laughing, surrounded by people who loved him for no reason beyond the fact that he existed. And Kane, Ambassador Kane, negotiator of dying stars, felt the first hairline fracture in the long view.
Kane cataloged the birthday gathering the way they had cataloged 1,000 other cultural events: spatial layout, participant count, sensory input density, emotional valence indicators. The numbers did not behave. Sound levels spiked unpredictably, laughter erupting without warning, conversations overlapping without resolution. Visual clutter exceeded recommended thresholds for cognitive efficiency. Scent markers fluctuated wildly as humans moved, gestured, embraced. And yet, instead of degrading cohesion, the chaos appeared to increase it. Humans flowed around one another with an instinctive grace Kane could not map. They collided and apologized, they interrupted and forgave. They shifted attention rapidly, but never lost track of the emotional center of the room: Matteo. He was everywhere and nowhere at once, darting between groups, showing off a new toy, vanishing only to reappear with a different friend in tow. Each adult interaction bent toward him naturally, as if drawn by gravity. Kane noticed something subtle. The humans did not orbit Matteo because he demanded it. They did so because they wanted to. That distinction mattered. Kane observed the gift exchange with professional detachment. Objects were presented one at a time, often wrapped in brightly colored paper that served no protective function. Matteo tore into them with abandon, the destruction of packaging eliciting laughter rather than reprimand. Each gift triggered a reaction: joy, surprise, delight, but Kane's attention fixed on the humans offering them. They watched Matteo's face. They leaned forward. They held their breath, waiting for his response. It was not the act of giving that mattered. It was being witnessed giving. Kane's internal systems flagged another anomaly: distributed emotional reinforcement loop. In Velothi culture, validation flowed upward, individuals seeking alignment with the collective. Here, validation flowed outward and inward simultaneously, bouncing between participants in an intricate web of micro-affirmations. No central authority, no hierarchy, just shared meaning. Kane felt the first stirrings of something they could not immediately suppress. Curiosity was expected. This was not curiosity. The cake arrived without warning. Lights dimmed, conversations hushed as if by instinct rather than instruction. Someone, Kane never identified who, carried the cake into the room, its surface glowing with 7 small points of fire. Flame was dangerous, unstable. In Velothi history, open combustion indoors was associated with industrial accidents in early developmental eras. Kane's safety protocols flared automatically. No one else reacted. The humans leaned in. The singing began. The melody was simple to the point of inefficiency. Kane recognized the structure immediately, designed for universal participation, not technical excellence. Its power lay in repetition, not complexity. Every voice joined, not in harmony, not in precision, in togetherness. The sound washed over Kane, unfiltered. They did not block it in time. Matteo stared at the candles, eyes reflecting flame, his breathing shallow with anticipation. Kane detected heightened cardiovascular activity, elevated neurotransmitter levels consistent with excitement. This mattered to him. Cain leaned toward Elena. "What is the outcome if the flames are not extinguished?" they asked quietly. Elena smiled without looking away from Matteo. "Then the song keeps going." "And the purpose of extinguishing them?" "He makes a wish," she whispered. "Then he blows them out." "A wish," Cain repeated. "Is this a formalized request?" Elena shook her head. "No, no one checks, no one enforces it." "Then why—" "Because," she said softly, "it's his." Matteo inhaled deeply. Blew. The flames vanished. For half a second, the room held its breath. Then it exploded. Applause, cheers, his name shouted from every corner. Hands clapped, voices rose, bodies surged forward. Matteo laughed. The sound hit Cain like gravitational shear. It was unrestrained, uncalculated, free of self-awareness, a pure expression of being alive now, in this moment, surrounded by people who wanted him here. Cain's emotional dampeners lagged, just for an instant. That was all it took. Cain's internal chronometers, normally background processes, surfaced into awareness. They had existed for 412 Velathi cycles. They had never once marked the passage of a single one as theirs. They had measured eras, epochs, negotiation phases, never a day, never a moment. The realization landed with unsettling force. Matteo's birthday was not a celebration of longevity. It was a declaration: I am here, I have been here, I matter today. Cain felt something tear. Not violently, quietly. Later, Cain found themselves seated at a small table designed for children, a paper plate balanced awkwardly in their hands. The cake sat untouched, its texture and composition incompatible with their biology. Matteo sat across from them, legs swinging. "You didn't eat," Matteo observed. "I cannot, my physiology." "That's okay, you can watch." Cain processed the statement. Watching was acceptable.
They watched as Matteo devoured his slice with messy enthusiasm, frosting smearing across his face. No one corrected him. No one shamed him. Laughter followed each exaggerated bite. "Do you like birthdays?" Matteo asked suddenly. "Yes," Cain answered automatically. The word felt incorrect. Matteo squinted. "You didn't sound sure." Cain recalibrated. "I am still evaluating." Matteo considered this, then nodded with the gravity of someone far older than his years. "They're good," he said, "because everyone comes." Cain tilted their head. "Everyone?" Matteo gestured vaguely around the room. "Everyone who cares." The distinction lodged itself deep in Cain's cognition.